It's one of the most less. I really don't want to.
Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you all to Grolier Poetry Bookshop for tonight's reading. Thank you so much for joining us.
I think I'm introducing you, right? So I'm up next. All right. So
we can take these off for this part.
for this, should I?
Oh, yeah.
So
We
it
wanna
is
see
much
you
better
try.
too. If everybody's comfortable with that, all
Is
right.
that okay?
I'll stand back. Okay. Fantastic. So I shall introduce the first reader, Anthony Carelli, who I've been reading with and read with just the other day in New York. So this is now officially a tour and not simply a one-time event. So I'm mostly going to introduce him with his own words, with a statement that he has written about his book, and then he's going to do the same for me. So just to give you a really little bit of basic information. I found this review, which I'm sure you know of your book, by Kate Kellaway from The Guardian a few years ago, who wrote when she reviewed his first book, quote, "There isn't much about Carelli on record." I like that. It makes it sound very serious. He was born in Toinette, Wisconsin, and studied at NYU. And I suppose him to be young, although his age is not revealed. Well, we can sort of judge her here. His day job is at a pie shop in Brooklyn. Still true or no?
No. That shop is closed.
Well, okay, that happened. I immediately thought of the show Pushing Daisies when I saw that. Yeah, pie shop, there you go. His first book was Carnations. That's the one that was being reviewed from 2011, published by Princeton University Press, like the new one, The New World, which we'll be reading from tonight. And his honors and awards include a Hodder Fellowship and a Whiting Award. Currently teaches at NYU and lives in Brooklyn. Still true? Great. And so of his new book, he writes, and here's the part where I quote him. "The oldest verses in this book were written in Paul Muldoon's backyard in New Jersey, where I first read Dante. The book took shape years later when my obsessive cyclings through the Commedia dell'arte and got tangled and electrified in Claudia Rankine's Citizen and Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me. Thereafter, the songs and stories became testimony to the collapse of those misinherited beliefs and imaginations that Rankine and Coates and many of us may wish to decry, reject, and hope to escape, and also singing strangely towards something like grace amid such disarray. But there's no pretending to escape these curses and purgatories. The poems took me, as Dante would, deeper into what encircles us. Only, unlike the Commedia's harmonic realms, the cosmos of the New World are ever collapsing, enduring for only moments at a time." Which I thought I would end with because I heard a few of these poems the other night, and that really seemed to capture what I think struck me most forcefully about them. So if I may now welcome up to this modest but lovely stage, my friend Anthony Carelli.
Thanks, Troy. Thank you, Troy. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Grolier, for hosting us tonight. Room full of masked faces. It's kind of how it looks when you're writing the poem. There's a room full of masked faces. The poem of the book was written on the occasion of an ultrasound technician telling my wife and me that our unborn boy could hear our voices, that he was old enough to hear our voices. My little Columbus, adrift at sea in utero, you're already reaching for worlds to come. Tracing the screen, more ink blot than portrait, we draw what is from what is shadow. Lima beam, hawk beak, bowsprit, it's you, steering to face what booms across your Indian Ocean. A distant-storied man on distant-storied land. Shouldn't I open with some cute synecdoche? More peaceable, less maniacal? The spirit invoked homes to only gilded horizons. Shouldn't I soften what I shape by shifting sounds? Who would dare? Pilgrim, distant listener, be it me or be it thunder, you hear beasts of unknown order. Savage to you, I hesitate in this thicketed wood. I step out to meet you, to sound on the shore for which you are bound. Please land gently, and listen, and listen, and listen, and stay. So the book's subtitle, its title is The New World, and the book's subtitle is Infinitesimal Epics. And as I was thinking about this the other night when we were reading together, I trying to come up with a definition of that. You all know what the words mean, but I think I was imagining a story that involves a hero's quest, one that might endure for a very long time, but whose action takes place in an instant. Maybe that's the comes and goes in an instant. And this poem is the first infinitesimal epic that I wrote, and it's based in Jamaica Plain. And one of the stars of the poem is here tonight. Maybe you'll get to meet her after the reading. The poem is titled Charlie at Full Speed. Sure, Annabelle put it best. Give us more Charlie at full speed. Yet on that day we can't forget, nothing much happened. Though Boston was simply ablaze, the Orr had proposed a game of bocce, and so his father, Howie, dove deep in the closet to scare up some sun hats. The only one that fit me was a chartreuse affair with an acre of floppy brim. It made a pale flower. Photo worthy, said Rivka, adding, Anthony, really, it's a bad architectural experiment on your head. And taking play pity, her hands scaled the scaffold to the cornices, rebending the saturnine rim. But I digress. Charlie at full speed. It being our very first day together, Annabelle, Anthony, Rivka, and Howie, with Leor the hub of our orbits, and being Howie and Rivka's first game of bocce, I'll call it our inaugural day. So, in short, 5 of us, misfit hats, a park in Jamaica Plain, nothing much happened. Charlie, their greyhound, came too. A rescue, delicate, rather handsome, and placid, glacially placid, until his flame-sharp head shot straight through Annabelle's thighs. Be polite, Charlie, Howie said, and Charlie was. Leashed, he loped, lay down, then loped on alongside us. As our underhand bowls of blue and red balls, so rarely very close to the pale Polino or Jack, led us up the park moraines and down through the kettles. To cool off, we'd shade ourselves in the still, warm craters of tree shade. Then Charlie got loose. But before that, some small talk. I love your sunglasses. Ah, good, Rivka, nice toss. Making a documentary about 2611. Charlie's the first greyhound I've ever known. How long in that apartment? I'll sit out the first round. It's hot as hell. What do you teach, Rivka? And so on. Our small talk. It's barely built of language. A 2 stones hit clicking, not quite exchanging anything. But isn't the ceasefire built of such material? And won't it get even smaller the smaller we're able to see? Charlie sighed and sighed and sighed. Ah, nuts, I hit a rock or root or something as a red ball headed off squirrely down a ravine. Then Charlie got loose. Invented at the height of the Roman Empire, the game of bocce, boasted the wrinkled booklet, dug up from the bottom of the canvas tote. And yonder, no dogs off leash, hollered back a rust-lit Parks and Rec sign. He sighed and sighed. When the dog sighed, I thought of that false friend sigh ages and ages hence, the one prophesied by Robert Frost, that most misread exhalation and subsequent delusion of a nation. How less and less is insignificant, how more and more is insignificant. In the year the boys bombed the marathon, in the year I resolved to text fewer pics. And it may be beside the point, but along the way, I might add, I've been playing a fairly mean game of bocce, scoring 5 to your 3, your 1, and your 0. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Move aside, now observe, and the poet will show you just how it's done. And then, you're dead, Carelli. That was Leor. As if just pretending the wind means the world. Leashed, he loped, lay down, then loped on alongside us. Then Charlie got loose. We all sure got along. The brute heat helped. Quick look at Charlie. The headline of the local rag that morning read simply baked bean. That got chuckles all around. Across the field, a tessellation. Every shape a Charlie, Charlie at full speed, an omega far off. Watch the road. An arch or a line storm when close, then dash, a teardrop, an oval, over oval, over oval, counter clock. Charlie, no, watch the road. And so Charlie, no, the 5 of us sallied forth, flying, fingers of debris, sailing out centrifugally across the paw-drawn ruts in a race dog's mind. Poor Charlie, someone said. Poor Charlie. Though nothing much happened. By then the greyhound had stopped. Charlie, now still, extended his throat just a little, just enough so his flickered tongue could taste the skin of the salt city now spinning above. Then, quite close to Rivka, Charlie sat down, knelt down, then lay across his red leash. He looked at none of us. He entertained no prayer. He breathed, breathed, breathed again, then set down his throat on the dirt. Charlie at full speed. Like a sand-white shard, the eye catches, only obliquely, watches let go as an earth-blue cup shatters, preternaturally slow. Whose toss? Your toss, Annabelle. And she said, just you wait. Then scattered the rest of us with the best ball of the day. And there came a hey, hey from the hilltop. 3 silhouettes, not friendly, wriggly, obviously drunk. Wormy arms lifted 3 black cans of black beer in the impure white sky, saluting us, who, when seen from such a distance, must also resemble mere shades of ourselves, or the enemy tribe. Still, I get the sense whenever I tell this story that, had those phantoms not been keeping watch, we'd have lost our hold on the dry slope and slipped right out of Massachusetts. poems, these infinitesimal epics, are intended to, in some way, welcome the boy into the new world. And it may seem odd that Charlie at Full Speed would be the poem that you would tell the boy as he comes into the new world. I think all the poems are a little bit odd in their singing and their telling for that occasion. But, well, I'll read this next poem. One of the title poems in the book. That's a more direct address of the boy. It's almost like the speaker remembers that this crazy thing going on all around us, this thing that's hard to narrate and hard to remember, ought to make a place to stand for those little feet. The new world. It's true. Pilgrim. For you, it may be that nothing happens anymore. That life is this, going on all around you all the time, and nothing else. That this land is blank land. This land is blank land, from California to the unnamed island. That from an Apollo staircase you may leap each morning, a moonwalker, to discover the plains of Kansas, at last devoid of evil men. That hallelujah now the cavalry may ride at your command, crusading backward through memory, their sword blades true with all we know now but couldn't know then. For Troy, if I maybe read the poem I was reading, maybe read one poem and then, I just want to check timing because this will be later than.
Well, we're here happy to stay.
I know, but I want to
with
do
you. I don't want to keep you
good
all night.
people. Okay. Okay. Did you know Richard?
Yeah, he was a professor of mine.
He was.
Yeah, well, he was here because of me. So,
Oh, so you knew him?
yeah,
Yeah, that's why it was named.
yeah,
That was when I asked him. He was Richard.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
His story said he was there.
Very nice, very brilliant guy. So,
What's his name?
Richard Moran, he's a philosopher. Yeah.
Seems like a sweet.
Oh, he's really great. He's really great. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we can come back and read Richard.
Yeah. Yeah. One of these days we'll work it out.
Oh. I'll read the new world. It's true. Pilgrim. For you, it may be that nothing happens anymore. That life is this, that goes on all around you all the time, and nothing else. That this land is blank land. This land is blank land, from California to the New York Island. That from an Apollo staircase, you may leap each morning a moonwalker to discover the plains of Kansas, at last devoid of evil men. That hallelujah now, the cavalry, may ride at your command, crusading backward through memory, their sword blades trued with all we know now, but couldn't know then. That your war horse's hammering head hits the source. That who, you rightly ask, who are the savages now? And true, it may be that the whole of your light shines forth in this darkening sky. The heaven between the dot that ends this sentence and the great cross heralding the next. That the infinitesimal is your new glory, and that indeed there is glory in a certain kind of small. That in the long night within your bones, there hangs the shard of a crescent moon, that we awaken, who, every morning, in a tome of tomes of tomes, that the great stars, immense burning, so faintly printed on a noontime flag, reminds us all that it is so. That grace may await you nonetheless, pilgrim. That in this in-between breath, you may find your rightful home in these stories that no one remembers, that without you, no one knows. Yeah, this will be the last poem. This is a poem that I think is disorienting, and it's disoriented. It's a poem about misremembering another line of poetry by a Russian poet named Osip Mandelstam, who was, among the supreme lyricists of human history, but certainly of the 20th century. And I mean, you all probably know who he is, but that was part of the energy of this poem is just a deep, deep love for this poet, and my misremembering a line that he had written, which was a small affair. It didn't happen in public, I would say. Or maybe in small ways in public. But it's was born out of that misremembering, and then the day where again nothing much happened. But through that misremembering, there was such an intense, like maybe not an intense shame, but such desire to know, like to look it up, and then that sends you down another 3 months of reading him or something. But it was all born out of just misremembering this line. And in this poem, that energy gives shape to an appearance of Osip Mandelstam in Brooklyn. And the poem is titled Osip in August. There was Osip, as there was a photograph I lost. I remember better now. As there is a bird and a wolf in a black foil path running back to old songs. As those songs that even the singer never heard, I remember. As while on coffee break this morning, we saw the poet Mandelstam and didn't skip a beat. There was Osip, older than he ever lived to be, staring at his hands held up, cupping sunlight. As one happens to know, though the world disconforms to the poem, the poet's arrival is perfectly natural, even inevitable. So wholly so that we barely notice. As an iced latte is just so good. As only later, as these appearances germinate, I begin to see what I saw, as I recall the geometer of empty Arabian sands, as I hear the train's whistle in prescient whispers of a primus stove, as I hear the great mustache, as I'm astonished to see Osip older, balder, shorter than one judges from the last photo. As outside Cafe Regular, he stood statue still on the sidewalk, paying no heed as we passed with our coffees in hand. As one click earlier, awaiting our lattes, I had misremembered and so had misquoted, and then I corrected, so I thought, one of Osip's exquisite lines. It was sound, I said, not light pouring into the fingers of mortals. But I, Osip wrote, I have forgotten what I wanted to say. My friend, did you notice the old man praying in the street? As the moment remembers me reciprocally, I remember the hand made of worms in the arms of a clock face turning in a treetop. I recall that at the end of December 1938, at an uncertain hour, Mandelstam dies. The poet skips off o'er a chance path of junk boats, aligned just this once in the mist. I recall these facts have arisen from a fiction. As the photo I remember is the path curving back to silver songs. As there's that tiny double portrait of the poet, one front-facing and the second shot in profile. Images I lifted today from the curb, where they drop like sparrow wings, separate and askew. Who drops them? What brother of Osip has just passed by? As the ages rush around in their infinite uniforms, no two the same, I return to Moscow quiet as a coffin. As Osip's woolen suit is too heavy for the season, how his sleeves were striped in sweat and wrinkled like sun-ruined skin. As I remember his hands held up to his chin, up in palms together as he bows in close to the pages, as if his verses had been puzzled by time, transmogrified to tongues like English, wholly unknown to the poet. As like death, in time, the portraits become irresistible, as half of Osip's feathers are broken or missing, as the poor man's feathers are broken or missing, and thereafter the story is born. As even across 80 winters, in one glance, you've recited the story in full, and the image itself is somehow now soothed for the moment, as a lost child held by a stranger in a crowd, as already a nomad, or exile rather, he's banished to the east, then re-banished further. As in Vladivostok, in the midway of his life, he dies of ice and failure, or so the story goes. As in the last photograph, he appears much older than a man of 47, though not half as old as he appears to us today. But I, Osip writes, I've forgotten what I wanted to say. As this was Osip in 1920, then our cold drinks appeared on the counter and we carried them out. As we entered the painted, unparticular fortress of that Brooklyn street, overdomed by London plane trees, bastioned by ivied townhouses, and busy only with the tow-headed kiddos who flashed downhill on their scooters. And there was the pilgrim, and there was a bird and a wolf and a stone. And here's the poem. It's the ruins, not the fortress, we recall and recite. Not the fortress, but the stones we trip over on land we mistook for untouched. That here the earth spits up time's architecture, the stone footings of our proper sorrow. Here are the holes in the hands that we build and rebuild to forget what's lost. That was Osip we circled, so as not to awaken a man so enthralled. That was Osip as we parted and swallowed the seas to the left and the right of his body. That was Osip recalled by misremembered verses. That the bird and the wolf are still here, patient in the roar of the moment, and that it is sound finally, not light, pouring into his fingers. It is sound, not light, pouring into our fingers. That it's the songbird elegizing Osip today, and that it is us, friend, stepping these immortal steps away. I remember better now. And now I get to introduce our next poet. Hailing from Liverpool, Nova Scotia, Troy Jalamore is the author of 4 books of poetry and 3 books of philosophy, as well as numerous articles, essays, and reviews. His first collection of poetry, Thomson in Purgatory, won the National Book Critics Circle Award. His third, Syllabus of Errors, appeared on the New York Times list of the best books of poetry published in 2015. Jolamore's most recent, this very present, book of poems, Earthly Delights, was written in a time rather like our own, a time of great uncertainty and anxiety. Some of its poems are political in the sense that they're confused, frustrated, impatient, angry. All of these, the poet suggests, are responses that are merited, indeed demanded, by the irrational and at times insane political landscape that currently imposes itself on us, on our relationships with one another, and our attempts to carry out lives and projects of goodness and value. But the poems are not angry or dark, let alone despairing. Despair, Jalamore has written, while occasionally justified, is more often than not cheap self-reassurance and engenders very little other than more despair. So, Jalamore sets forth statements in favor of life in the world, sources of genuine and meaningful consolation. I really wanted it to be a book about delight, Jalamore has said. The delight we can take and find in poetry, in language, in song. The delight we take in movies, one of my favorite art forms. The exquisite dazzle of a moving image, of a smile, or a kiss blown up vastly larger than life and projected onto a screen. The delight we take in one another's company, in the world and its natural beauties, and the delight we take in the quiet, unremarkable moments of our lives. In an ordinary afternoon spent at the beach, or such ordinary experiences as hearing the sound of a baseball hit by an aluminum bat from a long way away. This is all Troy's language. So now I'm pleased to invite the earthly delight himself to the stage. Troy Jalamore.
I get to take this off now.
Oh yeah, shoot.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. I'm going to start off with the first poem in the book, which is called Muse. It's an invocation to the Muse. You always hope the Muse is going to show up when you're writing, I think when you're reading, when you're doing anything creative, or one of the Muses, I should say. I think there's a lot of them. I don't know where they are. I don't know how they work. I don't know anything about it. It's very unreliable, but you hope they're there. So this is called Muse. Muse, wear me like clothing. Fade into my skin as I unfurl for you like an oyster shell or a work shirt bleached by sunlight. I've hung on the line for so long, here under the moon, to make this dark space inside where a song can suffer and grow. Mouth, mouth, move against me. You will sing, and then you will sing, then you will go. Then I will sing, then I will sing, and then go. Anthony, I really liked that last poem that you read about Mendelssohn. That was really lovely. Heather, you don't still have the Stalin elegy or Stalin epigram memorized, do you?
Oh, memorized?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I don't.
No, so I can't put you on the spot by having you out too bad.
No, I have.
It's been too long. But I won't put you on the spot any more than I already have. I just thought it'd be great to hear it. But too bad.
I'm so
Um,
sorry.
No, don't worry.
I
Of course,
just
no.
I just know.
Yeah,
Just the
you,
last
you,
line.
you have license to get it wrong, so don't worry too much about it. This is called Self-Portrait in Invisible Ink. Yes, that's me taking half a pill because I cannot remember whether I have already taken one today. So this way, I know I'm wrong, but only a little wrong, and not in which direction. You have done this too, haven't you? Raise your hand if you have. No, the other one. Raise your hand if you know whereof I speak. Raise your hand if you have ever asked your readers to raise their hands, knowing they know you can't see them. Yes, you are of my tribe. Of that we can now be certain. Welcome, friend. Here I am, living half a life, because I can't remember. And this way, I know that I'm dead, but only a little, and not in which direction. Welcome, friend, in the glass, at the bottom of the glass, bottomed boat. Are we in this together? Raise your hand if you are. Raise your hand if I am, but you're not. Raise your hand if, like me, you know whose ghost you want to hover over this. Thank you. That's very sweet. Thank you. This is a poem about a poem that will never exist. I'm sort of fascinated with artworks that will never exist or have never existed. For instance, I'm really fascinated by when you read a novel and there's an artist in the novel and they have written a novel and you want to read that novel, which you bet you know doesn't actually exist because it's all fictional. And I've started making a collection of those or references to them. And sometimes in a book, you'll get like a single line of a novel or something like that, or a paragraph. John Irving will give you sometimes, like lots of it. It's great. He'll give like a whole chapter, or Italo Calvino will do that kind of thing. Or in the film The Great Beauty, which is just such a magical film, Jeff Gambardella has written a novel and you get to hear one single line of it, but everyone talks about how beautiful it is. And because you don't get to actually know it, of course, it's sort of perfect, and you imagine how great it is. So I'm fascinated by these fictional artworks. And then I'm also really fascinated, I just published a little essay about this, by artworks that I will never get to see because it's too late. Like the example I talk about a lot in that, but there's many examples, is like Andre Gregory did this legendary production of Alice in Wonderland in the early 1970s, and I've read about it, and I've heard people who have talked about it, but of course I'll never get to see it. And again, there's something really magical about that because I'll never get to see it. So in my imagination, it's so good, it's perfect. Apparently it really was so good, but I'm not sure it could be as good as the one that's in my imagination. So this is about a poem that will never exist. And this is called The Poem You Will Not Live to Write. The poem you will not live to write. The poem you would have written if only you'd had one more month, one more day, one more hour, is a killer. A no-holds-barred, balls-out masterpiece. The one where you put it all together, everything you learned, everything you suffered, all the bits of being human you spent your life gathering up. It's the poem you have been waiting for all your life. The poem you will not live to write. The next poem you would have written after the last poem you will write, which is, it must be said, a perfectly decent, unexceptional poem. The sort of poem you would have read in some magazine or other had someone else been the author, or made it through the first half anyway, and then maybe turned to the theater reviews or the gossip column, or else just put the whole tiresome issue aside, is, let's admit it, a knockout. There's no avoiding the fact. The poem you will not live to write is the one that would make the grocer's daughter come back to you. It's the poem you'd wear like a pair of expensive stolen shoes to a wedding you weren't invited to. It's the one that waits for you in the dark, unseen in the underbrush, just outside the campfire zone of protected light, with nothing but an uninhibited, passionate kiss and your death on its mind. Thank you. I like that tiny, quiet little applause. This is called Spices. You have gotten the scent of spices on your fingers and carried it through customs, crossing borders that isolate one people from another. Those who wear violet on Tuesday from those who put on green on Thursday. Those who bestow the emphasis on the second syllable from those who accentuate the third. The ones who dust the meniscus of their evening coffee with particles of cardamom from the people who, in the way of their grandmothers and grandfathers, show a preference for a sprinkling of cinnamon. And this one is a little bit longer, but don't panic when I say that. It's not long, just longer. I think that's important. I did a reading once. Heather was there. Heather knows the story I'm about to tell. I'll keep it short. I'd have to keep it short otherwise, because it's about length. I did a reading, and it was for Ziziva, which is a wonderful magazine on the West Coast. And so Oscar Villalon, the editor, put this reading together with 6 readers. I was the last. I don't remember why I was the last. All 5 readers ahead of me went overtime quite a bit. And so it was turned into a lengthy evening. And it was late by the time. It was hot. It was late by the time I got up there. The chairs were very uncomfortable. Not like these. These are wonderful. You know, these are terrible, terrible, like Russian gulag chairs. I haven't shipped any. It was just awful. So everyone was really ready to go by the time I even got up there. And so I was reading a single poem that I had published in Ziziva, and it was a poem of some length, though again, not long. I mean, a long poem is like a book, like the cantos is a long poem, right? This was, you know, but also I had cut it down to fit in my 10-minute length. So I was the only, I would have been, or I was the only one of the readers who actually kept to the 10-minute. But of course, nobody had any way to know this. Anyway, Oscar got up to introduce me, and for some reason, he thought this would be a compliment. He said, "This is Troy Jollimore. You know, he published him once before or something. This poem, Vertigo, he's going to be. This is the longest poem we've ever published." Yeah, why did he say that? And he honestly thought, like, people would hear, "Oh, a long poem. That's awesome." He had no idea what he. And I could see their faces. Like, I knew what it was doing to people. So Oscar and I had to talk after that. Oscar's the most wonderful guy, but I was just crazy. So this is a poem called Marvelous Things Without Number. After 40 or so summers, you kind of get the idea. The slow deepening of the plum blue dusk that offers a backdrop for the stately silhouettes of disconsolate, sentinel-like telephone poles. The fading chorus of evening birdsong. The sharp hollow pong of an aluminum bat making contact with the ball somewhere off in the distance, followed by the joyful and at the same time somehow mildly forlorn minor uproar of a clutch of children cheering. Eventless days at the beach, the scorched sand stinging beneath your feet, the sand in your clothes and your hair, a relentless ubiquitous grit that remains undislodged after any number of showers and shampooings. The familiar dirt that collects underneath your fingernails and your hair growing longer. Careless afternoons endured and discharged in the backyard hammock, or a languid folding chair by the lake, reading Amy Clampett, reading Rilke. Teenagers playing an eternal game of Monopoly or Risk that might well be the very same game they started last summer. The same hummingbirds taking the same flight paths back to the endless empty abundance of the same backyard flowers and feeders. Some friends are renewing their vows. They were married a decade ago. Some friends are driving up to one of the casinos on Friday to hear a tribute band who have modeled themselves after Led Zeppelin or Journey. A friend who left for the East Coast 2 years ago has flown back to Chico to take photos of Mount Lassen exactly 100 years after its catastrophic eruption. For a while, it feels like everything is a reenactment of something that has already happened. Even dumping a skidder of raisin bran into a bowl and then pouring milk over it. Or sitting on the porch or trying on sneakers takes on the aura of a ritual. Are you trying to deny time and change? To say that death will have no authority here? Or are you celebrating the fact that everything is in flux and ungraspable? Or is the season doing one or the other of these things for you? Mornings glow like dreams, like memories. with a radiance that has been lying latent in the earth all night. You can do it again, whatever it is, but you can't do it over. The beautiful girl kissed can't be unkissed, and who would want that anyway? But you might. And so you repeat, 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 feeling rich with existence and time, and a kind of exhaustion you have learned to savor. The end of side B, after all, simply means that you flip the record over and listen to side A again. And did you say that life would always be this way? Or were you told that by someone in the past? And now hang on to that belief in the face of what must be mounting, but for now, still invisible evidence to the contrary. Stay invisible, you say to it. Stay, you whisper. Stay just as you are, just a little bit longer. Which is just another way of telling the story you tell the children every night. How the birds and the rivers remembered the songs, even when the people forgot. And how, when the people regained the ability to remember, they learned the songs again from the birds and the rivers. The children's wide, trusting eyes as you say this, as if what you said was, to use that phrase we used to like to use, the gospel truth. It's only a story, after all. You mean no harm. No one means any harm. The world is ancient, full of shades and spirits, not all of them friendly, and we do with it what we can. I think there's a reference in there I probably have to explain to the younger people about flipping the record over. I think some of you probably have no idea. Catch me afterwards, we'll talk about that. I have a little instructional video. I think I'll read just a couple more. I know that some of you may have places to be, and the evening may be lengthening, more than you expected, so I don't want to go on at length, especially after my experience with Oscar. So maybe I'll do this one, which is a sonnet, and not even mine, it's a translation, and then one more with a little length, but not too bad, and that'll probably be enough. So this is a Mallarmé poem called A Toast. The original was called Salut, published in 1893. And I haven't done many translations. I've worked on a fair number, and I'm almost never happy with them because I really try hard to capture the original music as much as I can, which obviously is an impossibility because it's a different language. You just can't. But the exercise is wonderful. Every once in a while, I get one where I feel like that's close enough that I can let it out there and let people see it. And, translations are a wonderful thing. I mean, I have benefited so much over the years from the translations of others and been able to experience at least some degree of works that I just would have had no access to otherwise. It's just, thank God for translators. They're the most wonderful people. So this is, I think, the third I've ever, there's two in this book and there's one in my previous one. So far I published 3. So I don't think of myself as a translator, but I dabble, and it's fun. And Mallarmé is just amazing. He's just incredible. So this is called A Toast. It's nothing, spume poem, pure froth. Names nothing, names only this vessel. In some faraway sea drowns a passel of Muse mermaids, ass over tea kettle. So, my various friends, we traverse these waters, I astern and on course, you, the lush avant-garde, cleaving asunder the onrushing flood tide of winters and thunder. A drunk spell so lovely inspires me, though the deck's pitching, I'm without fear, to stand and toast what we hold dear. Solitude, rock reef, or star, whatever it is that calls forth the salute of our bright blank sailcloth. And so I think I'll just read one more. I think I want to say before I end, I love reading anywhere to anyone who will listen, but I especially love reading in bookstores for reasons that are probably obvious enough that I don't need to explain them. But this one in particular, all this poetry here, it's so inspiring somehow. And thinking about the people who have been here and who I'm sure have been here, we've been through some hard times. We're still going through some hard times, but maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I certainly like to hope so. That there's still places like this. I mean, that thing I wrote which Anthony read, that I called the book Earthly Delights. There's a long story about how the book came to be called this, which I won't tell. I will only say it had a different title before, and Heather, who, among many other things, does quality control for me, disapproved of that title, and so I decided I had to change it. And came to call it Earthly Delights, and it does feel like the right title because with all the darkness lately, you know, with all the difficulties, pushing back and celebrating even really small pleasures, even really little things that are so easy to overlook feels so important to me right now. And so, yeah, to be here, to get to read here, I hope, you know, we both got books for sale, and you can buy them if you want, but whether you do or not, I hope you buy something here. And I hope that those of you who live around here come here a lot and buy their books, because we need places like this to stay open.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just really want to thank everybody who's helped involved with this, and thank you so much for helping organize it. We really appreciate being here. Thank you all just for coming and being here. We all have other things you could be doing. It's a great city. You know, there's many entertainments here. I know that. Your entertainment options, you know, it's like they say on the airline, right? We know you have many options. Thank you for choosing us. That's what I like to say. So, all right. So I started with the first poem in the book, and this is the last poem in the book. And also the most recent poem. I wrote it, or started it in Sardinia just before the pandemic hit, and then finished it over a couple months that followed. It's called Odysseus Departing. Sometime between the 7th day and the 77th, or maybe the 700th and 77th, when the maker's task was more or less completed, and all that remained was to tidy up some debris and perform the final inspections, Odysseus, his journeys and homecomings lying still in his future, not yet the stuff of myth or legend, not yet a set of tales to be told round the fire, not yet a make-work project for generations of scholars and interpreters, finished supper and announced that he would go to bed early. He was to depart in the morning. Lying in that massive oak-rooted bed, the soft body of Penelope prone beside him, he watched the last light fade to blackness, turning his wife from a three-dimensional figure into a film noir silhouette. She was worried about Telemachus growing up without a father, and so he stroked her hair and gently reassured her, the boy will never be without a father, even when his father is far away. He did not say, because he knew she would hear it whether he said it or not, and that it would be better if he did not say it. And even when your husband is far away, you will never be without a husband. Neither of them had any idea how long he would be gone. Neither knew of the plague of suitors that was poised to descend on the house. Nor had she yet begun the skein raveling and skein unraveling that would occupy her hands and hold them at bay for years. Odysseus could never really sleep on nights like this, the night prior to a journey. But he did not dread the long hours of in-betweenness, the dim light like being underwater, his body pressed against her warm and cherished body. The weight of the years to come, of the battles and travels dimly sensed, weighed down on him. And although he had meant what he said, and all that she had heard, even though he had not said it, he was a human, and so not immune to fear, to dread, to prospective regret, projected toward every night that his wife would be forced to sleep the great bed alone, growing older by the hour, his son growing older by the hour, while he laid his body down, who could say where, on cold rocks, most likely, under unrecognized stars, wherever a space could be found, between bodies or in the space where there were no bodies, aching for her presence, his body frisked by the waters and winds. He was not afraid of dying. He almost craved to know how it felt, that last journey, that adventure. But the idea of staying dead forever, separated from wife and son, was awful. Our fear of death, he thought, inclines us to certain theories regarding time and the gods. In the morning, he sat at the table with her for an hour almost, saying nothing, sipping tea. And when it came time to go, she kissed him gently on the cheek, then on the lips, harder. Then they went outside to stand in the sun, and she lifted up their boy so the father could look back and see them both when he reached the edge of the property, which he did, then turned away and shouldered his pack with the lunch she had prepared for him and marched down that as yet untranslated road. Thanks so much for being here, for listening. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. Let's give another round of applause for this wonderful reading tonight. Thank you on behalf of Grolier, the Minkiti family, and everyone else involved in Grolier for attending tonight. Thank you for bearing with us as we got through the many occasions of tonight. And we've got some books for sale over here. Please pick up your chairs and just put them against that back door would be wonderful. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your evening. We have another reading next Wednesday, Tara Skirtu and Lloyd Schwartz. In person is sold out, but we have many virtual spots available. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Troy, beautiful. Thank you.
I took it from they took it to put on the floor. That's not. No, maybe it was. It was. Yeah.
Could it have been wheelchairs, maybe?
I don't know because it was up on the
Possibly.
front.
It's also
Well, there are lots of
I didn't think it was
That was a
very
beautiful reading, guys. Thank you so much.
Really nice to read here.
Yeah.
So nice place is still here.
That's